Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, David Carr, founder of Steward Your Business, where we bring people together to accomplish great things, including awesome new guests. And today we have Justin Lund on the podcast. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, Dave. Thanks to be here.
Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. Now, Justin, before we get into the meat of it, because you're going to talk about some great coaching, guiding principles, frameworks that you use in helping business owners really scale and develop their business more effectively. But I always like to let our listeners kind of hear a little bit about those guests that are coming on as your journey as a business owner, the things that you've gone through, and why do you do what you do today? What gets you up in the morning saying, man, I love doing this. I love helping business owners improve their businesses, making them run better. So take us back a little bit, Justin. Give us a little bit of your background here. And I'll be asking you more questions through the podcast so everybody else will get to know more as we get in here.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I guess, I started at a young age. There were things like Tony Robbins on infomercials on TV back in the 80s. It kind of got me going. My brother, actually, my older brother, bought one of those, and this is the 80s. So I think they were like $300 for the personal power.
Oh, wow.
Set.
Yeah.
And he let me just use it and listen to it whenever I wanted. I thought that was the neatest thing. I was probably 8. I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool. This guy just getting everybody all pumped up, and he'd talk about flying in his helicopter into these events that he would speak, and I just thought, man, that'd be cool. Be your own boss. Helicopter, this is cool. And then fast forward through several years of life and jobs and different things that I did. Got married. I had some struggles with addiction and painkillers. Went through some of those challenges. That led me to start learning about. Before that, I was in sales, and I loved the blend of psychology. I took psychology classes in college, but I didn't really want to go into therapy or anything like that. So when I got into sales as a way to put me through college, I loved it because I was using psychology, learning more about it, but I could talk just like Tony Robbins in my sales pitch. I was pitching like how to accomplish goals and dreams. So I loved that part of it, but that's where the introduction of drugs came. From that, I went into a rehabilitation facility. And that was all about psychology. I really got to learn about myself. I learned about frameworks. I learned about systems and why I might make the choices that I made sometimes. Some of the things that were triggering, that were just below the level of consciousness. And I learned how to bring those up to the level of consciousness. So I was aware of them. Coming out of that situation, that chapter, I had a bit of a motivation, maybe even a chip on my shoulder to really prove to the world that I wasn't just really a worthless bum and that I could accomplish something. So I put everything into a business, and I started to see some good success and results with that. And I grew that very rapidly over the next few years. It reached 7 figures, then 8 figures, and then just shy of 9 figures.
Wow.
Through that process, I brought an individual in to help me because I'm not good with numbers, and I was really, the taxes scared me, and I had some limiting beliefs like that. And the short version of the story is he kind of took me to the cleaners and took tens of millions of dollars from me. So this big enterprise that I had built with almost 100 employees, 90 something million dollars of revenue, just like emptied it all the way.
Yes.
And with that, kind of committed some tax complications, where there was forged signatures on tax returns.
Oh, man.
And claims and taxes that were filed that said there was $300,000 of revenue in a year when there was 30 million. It's like,
oh my gosh.
That's
a little off.
That's not quite right. So that created a 4.5-year battle legally to try to go back and substantiate, who did what, when, where, go through the process of discovery, peeling back dozens, even hundreds of shell companies where money was funneled and siphoned, taken. So all these things that I wasn't good at, the numbers, the accounting, the taxes, I had to get a master's degree in it from the School of Hard Knocks. And,
oh man.
And so that brought me in about the middle of that litigation process, a friend of mine called me and said, don't you have guys that do like payroll and stuff now for you? And I said, well, I guess, because I employed a number of accountants and bookkeepers and even lawyers on staff when I was fighting that battle to try to get out of that situation. So as a favor, we told her that we would do her books and file her and take care of her payroll. She loved it so much that she told 5 of her closest friends, and they all called us. And within a year, we had 50 clients that we were doing their books, their payroll, all the admin, all the things that suck about the business. They started a business because they like to bake cookies, but they want to stay in the kitchen. They don't want to stay in the spreadsheet. So we just took that stuff on and just build them by the hour. And that's kind of what got me started in with that. And my role in that, because I'm not an accountant, I'm not, you won't find me spending extra time in spreadsheets.
Yeah, me neither.
But I did, through those experiences of life and those 15 years and the hard fought lessons that I learned, I recognized that I don't need to be scared of spreadsheets. I still don't love them. But that's my role through those years as we began, and Propel was born with just like an outsourced service provider. I would work with the founders on their growth strategies. I would work with the founders on a tax strategy, or just even tax, like just thinking about it and giving them basic, simple frameworks, as well as just kind of unlocking some limiting beliefs. Having gone through this, like having a PhD in limiting beliefs and how to figure out how to overcome them.
Relate to that, yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of what landed me here. And now my sweet spot is really just working with other founders, that are 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years into their process, some much more, but it tends to be a revenue target that I see where people hit some of those blocks.
The life cycle of the business, right? You've been there.
Yep. And they hit, I call it a capacity ceiling of some sort. They start out doing the thing they like to do, but then within a period of time, and usually you can tie it to an amount of revenue, they start to get these other draws on their attention. They hire people, they have tax issues, they have all these things that have nothing to do with the business they started initially. And that's where there's not a switch. There's nobody there to tell them, hey, it's time for you to now stop being a plumber and start being a human resource manager. You need to spend 5 hours a month learning how to manage human beings. So those create problems because we kind of just deal with what we have to. We put out the fire, and then we jump into the next thing. We do the next bid. We submit the next quote. We do the next RFP, whatever it is. We go back to the business of trying to run the business, and these things tend to build and fester. And what that usually creates is some sort of a pain threshold. So I'll see founders start climbing and they get to the ceiling and then they start going down again, because that ceiling is kind of where all that pain starts to come to the surface of tax issues, payroll issues. They'll hire an operator and then pay them $100,000 a year. After 6 months, they realize the only thing that changed is their balance sheet. They've got less money now because they paid all this money to somebody they didn't really know how to manage. They didn't have the systems in place for a person like that to come in and actually be successful. So I kind of start back to the beginning and say, let's work up this process. I call it a delegation pyramid. You got to start with the foundation. You don't build a house from the roof down. You start on the ground.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's my sweet spot. I love it.
Yeah, no, I want to dig into it. So the reason I appreciate you sharing your journey, Justin, in the sense of a lot of business owners, they haven't got to that level where you got, where maybe in 90 million revenue. But here's the reality of what you said. If you don't have the right systems and the processes and people in place, that can all be gone, and you complications. And so, listening to you, Justin, is an example of having somebody that's been there, done that, can help guide you, avoid some of those pitfalls and go further, faster, hopefully, with your help. Definitely. And then, Justin, you and I, we talked before this podcast. I'm focusing only on one aspect of this part of the delegation, is the people specifically. And this is why I love having you come in, because I love working with folks like you, Justin, with business owners, because you're getting them to think more strategically, stepping back, and not being in the weeds of the business, which is easy to do. Like you said, you're getting pulled in. That's what I heard you say, getting pulled in a different direction. And before you know it, you look up and you're like, we've drifted. I'm not clear where we're at. I don't have a real an understanding of all these things. And so maybe spending more time and energy, and I'm excited to break this down with you, in one area of the business where I was just talking with a business owner today, Justin, where he was like, oh, I've been focusing so much on the sales side, bringing in the revenue, but the operation side has been neglected. And we just had a $10,000 problem because we didn't think about that. And I got to fix all of that. That's a lot, because I was all focused over here, but that was being neglected, the operation side of it. So it's like, it's a challenge, right? For a business owner to know and stay on top of all this stuff.
Totally. So what you just described, I mean, I can see that visually in my head so well, because I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of founders that describe a picture very, very similar, if not exactly the same to that. So picture it this way. You're going this direction, sales. Oh, wait, operations. Oh, wait, customer service. Delivery, And then, so you've got this way. And then you get to the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year. And because you went this way 25% of the time, and then you went this way 25% of the time, now you're back where you started, and you're just feeling like, what in the hell am I doing? And it feels, that feeling, it probably the best word to describe that I've heard most people say is just stuck. I just feel stuck or trapped. Like nothing's changing,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. You're stuck or totally burned out too. You're like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Or I feel trapped in my business,
Yep. Exactly.
You've heard that, but now you've been able to get on the other side. So from this getting stuck or having a breakdown, you have been able to help fix businesses and see some things. You said earlier, some of the limiting beliefs or mindsets about some things. I think that they hear these things out there. And I felt like, at least for me, Justin, I felt like sometimes they feel like, well, I should know all this stuff. I should figure out all this stuff on my own, maybe be aware of it. But to your point, you're kind of your own limiting factor, right? You're at a certain point where you're the governor, you can't go any further. So speak a little bit about that journey of like, where you've seen business owners and you've worked with them where they're like, okay, I'm willing to be coached. I'm willing to look at the strategy, or feeling like they have to know all the answers. Talk about the little differences that you see in the success.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. So that's a big, the founders usually looked up to, they're the boss, right? So you have all these people, especially if you have a team, 2, 3, 5, 25 people, they're looking up to you. The answers always come to you. So what that creates is a bottleneck, right? It's the top of the bottle. It's the smallest part of the bottle. It's where the least amount of throughput can go. And I try to practice and teach things to the people that I coach. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And I tell my team all the time, if you guys are waiting for me to have all the answers, we're screwed. Like it's not going to happen. I like to say things like that just to emphasize and reiterate that we all need to go find answers to the problems that we're dealing with. So I call it the founder freedom flywheel, because to me, it's kind of a 3-sided thing that has motion, right? And the 3 pillars of this is mindset, systems, and delegation. And we go through this process. We work on some mindset to kind of see what might be holding us back, what's sticking. Somebody might think I have to solve every problem. When somebody comes to me, I have to answer, because who else will? Okay, so we got to work on that. All right. Once we work on that, then we need to develop some systems so that when people approach that person for answers to everything, there is not just a reaction, but there is a set of dominoes that fall. Oh, this happens. Boom, 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 boom. System. Okay. System. Anything that saves yourself time, energy, money. System. All right. Acronym. So remember that. And then delegation. Like, how can you get it off of your plate so that you as the founder, because nobody knows more about the business. And these people started a business because they have some passion. They have I think entrepreneurs are some of the just brightest, and that's what I learned in rehab, that if I could deploy my mind and my faculties into something good instead of some stupid addiction that was all consuming, right? I might just be able to accomplish something pretty cool, Yes. And that's what all these founders, they're up against this capacity ceiling where the pain threshold is so great and they feel like I'm burned out, I'm stuck. But all they need is a little shift in mindset, development of some systems, and then to delegate the things off their plate. So we go through time and energy audits. We take a look at what things are, what are the things in the business that really light you up? What are the things in the business that really suck? What are the ones that, doesn't mean they can't be done and you can just be like, oh, I'm not going to do anything that sucks. But there's a system that we can create, and there's delegation tactics and playbooks that we can implement quickly so that you can still inspect what you expect. Okay. I didn't do that and lost $25 million. Okay. So don't do that. Like, don't bury your head in the sand. You have to inspect it. But if you have the right mindset to go into creating a system, and you have somebody that can help you to create the systems where you may lack a little bit of the knowledge, then you have the delegation tactics and inspecting what you're expecting, then you've created, you give yourself a little more room in your calendar, a little more space, a little more time, a little less feeling of stuck. And when you're, okay, I can breathe now. Now, what are you going to do with that new time? Can you deploy it back into the areas that light you up, the areas that bring you more revenue, the areas that, those things. And some of it needs to go into self-development. Like, if numbers are your weakness, you have to spend a little bit you do not need to be a CPA. You do not need to go to college and get a master's degree in accounting. No, one of the first things I set up with clients is I tell them to set up a meeting with their CPA 4 times a year. Like, do it today after our first coaching session.
There you go.
Call up, book it. Don't do it in March. Don't do it in April. Do it in May. Do it just after these big pressing dedeadlines, and just get on the phone and talk, and just let them know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a couple good points. So as I'm following you, it is first the mindset, then we get into the systems, then we can figure out to delegate. So I think this is important as you're breaking it down. What I'm hearing, Justin, is because I think a lot of times people say, and I want you to speak to this subject because I'm sure you probably hear this a bit, and I hear this sometimes when I'm trying to help people, and I really can make a difference, and that's why I have you on the podcast, because voices like theirs need to be heard. But some people say it's usually, they might have the money, but they'll say, well, I don't have the time for this. Like, is this going to take me away? And that's a mindset of I don't have enough. Instead, tell me, Justin, how do you reframe it? Because I know you do. I just want to hear from your way of, like, to the business owner just says, well, I don't know, can I just go on a little longer and not doing this? And, the pain is there. And what happens is we kind of get numb to a pain, right, Justin? I mean, you've dealt with addiction, and there's a certain point where it just, you're like, okay, we're just kind of, it's our new normal, and that's not good, right? But that's our normal. That's what we know right now.
Yep.
Right.
So let me speak to kind of two sides of that issue. First, the latter is the new norm is actually a pretty vicious dopamine release cycle. Okay. So when you are dealing with the pain, and so let's say the pain is everybody runs to you, you're the hero, you're the firefighter. Well, there's a little voice in the back of your head that's not very loud, but it says, look how important I am. Look how much validation I get at a day's work. And so with time, it becomes very hard to let go of that. And that's one of the things that takes, I've got a few clients right now that they're 20, 25 years in business, and it's very hard for them to let go. And it's hard for them to even see younger guys that they don't have that much history of the habits. They're recognizing a little quicker typically that, oh, whoa. Yeah, I don't want to be the hero. I want to be on a beach, man. I want to be enjoying the business. So that's one thing that you've really got to be mindful of. And just think about it. You have all these people, all these issues, and you have to solve it. What does that say? That's the underlying message is, I'm important. I matter. What I say is the high, my way or the highway kind of thing. And that just makes you feel like, okay, I may not know how to scale this business to $10 million. I may not know how to have an exit and get out of here, but at least I'm important in what I do every day when I get up. Okay, so that's a bad thing potentially that you need to be mindful of. Yeah. The other part of that is people feeling like maybe I'll just do it myself. It's kind of what you were speaking to, and what's coming to my mind.
Like, I don't have to. I'll just figure it out on my own.
It'll take me longer to teach somebody else than it will to just do it myself, and that's true in a sense. But those are some of the blocking mindsets that, again, with mindset systems and then delegation. So the way I try to get into that is show them. Well, one of my philosophies is quick wins, David. I try to, I could sit and talk about mindset for weeks on end, but a lot of people are like, okay, cut to the chase. I'm busy. What are we going to do? So I have a library of playbooks, and one that I would pull out in this case is called recording and routing. Okay. So when somebody says, Well, I spoke to a woman yesterday. Okay. And I've got a session with her today. And she's like, I've got all these things and nobody knows how to do it but me. And I'm doing all these things and I'm working 80 hours a week and it's killing me. I can't. I'm like, okay, well, how hard are the things you're doing? And what I'm going to go into with her today is recording and routing, because the work that she's doing is admin work. I mean, it's basic. I can outsource it to somebody in the Philippines for 12 to 15 bucks an hour and get it done probably better than her.
Yeah.
You know, but they need a playbook to follow. They need an instruction manual to follow. And she's never created one. So in her mind, she's very scared to do that because that's not her strong suit. That's not what she excels at. So you know what I do? I grab this. This is how I record. I have a little tripod that I keep with me in my bag everywhere I go. And when I'm doing something that I don't like doing, that I do again and again and again, I pull out the tripod, I stick my phone on it, I record what I'm doing, and then I route it to the right place. Now, so I have a playbook that kind of breaks down how to do this, how to record it, how to take a few different iterations of it, how to upload it, and the right prompts to use with ChatGPT. And then you've got version 1 of a playbook. And then you take that playbook and you turn it into a checklist. Now you have your first SOP. You know, it's standardized. It's ready to use. It's not perfect, but it's 90% perfect, 80% perfect. And if you can get that stuff off of your plate. So back to your question, like, what if somebody just feels like, nah, I don't really want to let it go. It's going to be longer. It's harder for me to teach somebody else and just do it myself. And they're going to mess it up anyway. Well, if you can get back 5 hours this week, 7 hours this week, taking some of these things off of your plate, that's a huge win. And even if they only do it 80% as effective as you would do, but it's 0% of your time, cool. I'll take that trade every single day of the week for sure.
Right. And they don't see that without somebody like you, Justin, coming in and auditing it and saying, look, what are these things that you're doing? And this is the power of having somebody like yourself, Justin. And I do it on the people side too, is like, hey, lean in. And that's why we have you on the podcast and other guests. Come check out Justin. We're going to make sure you guys can connect with him because we're connected on LinkedIn and other links and all that stuff. We'll have all that in the show notes. But, you know, just recognize, are you in that space, right, of the mindset? And if not the mindset, then hopefully we getting that place. I'm sure it creeps in even while you're working with folks. It might come back in, I'm sure, Justin. But to the point of like going quicker, and you've done this through multiple businesses and different types of industries and things, and saying, okay, how do we get through and start creating your baseline? Like, I like your flywheel of, you know, the systems in place, so that way we can then actually, because you can get to the point where you're talking about delegation, but you can't delegate if you don't have it clearly identified, like all the things that we do, right?
Correct. And often when you try to, and this is another major common mistake, is you feel that pain, you're hitting that level and you feel the pain of all this time and effort and energy. Same with the woman I just mentioned from yesterday. She's feeling the pain. She hired an assistant and now has nothing but negative things to say about that assistant. You know, now again, not only is the work she's working just as much and now has less money to spend because some of that money is going out to pay an assistant who is ineffective. And she's ineffective because we didn't start with the mindset and the systems before we got to delegation.
She just started saying, here's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. And tried to train and then tried to retrain. So she's reducing her time that she could work by pouring time into her. She's reducing her money by paying this other assistant. So all these things go down. And that's such a common pattern that I see with small business owners is we just, again, we start a business because we have a thing we like to do. And I use like baking cookies as just an example, because you can picture this person. They got a little chef hat on and they got flour on them and they're in the kitchen and they're having fun, you know. Now enter spreadsheets, payroll, 941 withholding return forms, like the IRS. Like, has nothing to do with the business that they started. So that's typically, if you follow that analogy along, it's like you start because you're good at it. You know how to bake a cookie that puts a smile on people's faces. And you're like, maybe I'll go do this, you know? And then before long, you're dealing with all these problems out there that have nothing to do with baking cookies. And that's where you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And you reach this point where you just need to look at mindset, systems, and delegation. And David, with that process, that flywheel creates levels. Like as soon as you go through that cycle once, then you can level up. But as you get to a new level, there may be a new devil, so there's more mindset and systems to deploy and bring in to bear there. And that's why I have a delegation pyramid. Starting at the bottom, it's getting rid of the administrative, the admin stuff that the payroll, the email, the calendar, the basic stuff that's necessary evils. But then you go into more of the fulfillment and the delivery and the onboarding side of it. Then you go into marketing. Then you go into sales. Then you go into leadership. Okay. What a lot of people do is try to jump to leadership. They feel this pain and they're like, I need somebody that can just lead this mess. And they go hire a CEO or COO. Terrible move, because they have no experience in building any of that foundation up. They can't even manage their own email, and they're trying to manage themselves. CEO.
Yeah. It's the same thing I see too, Justin, where I see people do like, I don't really like doing sales really well, so I'm going to hire some salespeople. But if you don't know the process and understand it, they're going to do, like you said, at best maybe 80% or something. They're going to do less than you can. So, and then you're going to get frustrated. I'm spending this money, they're not getting it done. Like, yeah, because you didn't understand this.
Right. And even sales is a great example, because there's a lot of people. I worked with a lot of software development firms, and a lot of software guys don't like to sell. They're introverted, right? Here's the interesting common theme that I've seen with all the software guys that I've worked with. Introvert as they are, once you get them in a situation where there's an opportunity and a prospect to talk to, and that prospect has questions and they're talking about the service or the offering that they have, these introverts light up. Why? Because they're talking about their expertise. They're talking about their sweet spot. So they think, limiting belief, that they can't do sales, and then they try to delegate something that is second in my pyramid. It's second to the top. For you delegate that second to last. Okay. So if they can just stay there, there's different things that we do that with like magnetic marketing to just bring people into their world. If you have prospects that are leaning in, that are familiar with you, that know what your service is about, we can make sales calls not really feel like sales calls. They're just conversations with people. And most, even introverted software developers kind of like that, to get out of the code for a minute, because who else could talk about those solutions? Do you think some outside sales rep is going to talk about a high-tech, complex AI solution that they're going to build for this? Not a chance.
Right.
I even acted as a salesperson in a software development firm that I was a part owner of. This is how I would sell. I'd get on the phone and I would say, Dave, hey, great to meet you. Awesome. So yeah, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this stuff, but here's my partner here, blank, and he's way smarter than me. I'm just here to tell a couple of jokes and everything. So tell us what you want.
Tee it up.
Done. All the rest of the conversation was him, and I'd just take some notes, and I was taking notes to build a contract, and I'd put that into a contract, and I'd send them, and that was it. We were done. And it worked really well. But he didn't like sales, and I'm like, do you realize you handle 99% of the conversation? Like, you don't really need me, but I'm happy to show up.
Well, I think to your point, and this is one thing that I like, Justin, is as you're helping them with strategy, it's important that they do the work, mindset, understanding who they are. I do that with the teams too, in integrating folks, because your point, right? It's like knowing how to communicate with these different folks, whether it's in a sales conversation, or whether it's, in internal communications, understanding this so that you're not undermining your influence, understand how you naturally show up. To your point, Justin, we all have these different mindsets, but then we all have different strengths and abilities and things we have to know where, hey, this is not my strength, or I need to be aware. And then how do I better leverage the team? And getting to your point, where I love, if we can get all of the mindset, the systems really dialed in, and the delegation, then that's where I love working with you, because I'm all about the building out that team. Then we're talking about the leadership. We're really getting all those folks working well together in alignment with them. And this is a business owner, I'm sure, right, Justin, you're trying to get them to stay on mission, vision, your values. What's the big thing we're trying to accomplish, instead of getting sucked back into the weeds? Why did you create the business to begin with? What was the purpose in creating this business, this organization? And what I love, and I'm sure you probably do this with Justin, because one of the things is, as you come together as a business owner, is it becomes more than you, hopefully. It's its own organism, it's its own entity. So what does that look like, and how are you stewarding it? And of course, my word, stewarding it well, versus, we see many businesses start off in one way, but they go off the rails. They lose their kind of their mission and like the relevancy, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're helping them, I hear, Justin, keeping relevant, keeping on point, and also being able to adjust. We see a lot of changing things, technologies and demands, and so we're still looking at tariffs or whatever it is. There's certain things always coming in, right? It's so it's like you can't just set it and forget it, right? A strategy.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And I like what you just said, and that's so important to know. Why did you start this business? What was the goal? And you have to slow down to get to that point, and a lot of people that I talk to don't feel like they can slow down. And that's why I like to focus first on some quick wins. If I can get 5, 6, 7 hours back in your week and I can measure that, I can show you how you have clawed back some of that time. Now, can I convince you to deploy some of that time to actually go back to that question? Why did you start this business? What was the point? Because the analogy we used earlier of left, right, forward, backwards, like if they could align those actions so that they were all going in the same direction, now 4 hours spent get you 4 hours ahead instead of an hour. This way, that way to land you right back where you started. So to me, that alignment is critical. I usually can get more buy-in for people to spend that time with that alignment, David, once we get a few quick wins with some systems and some delegation, because unfortunately, people usually land on my lap when they're feeling like I can't effing take this anymore. Like they're just getting pulled in every direction, and it's like they want to give up, they want to quit. And a lot of people come to me just because they're like, I want to sell this business. I'm done with it. I'm tired of it. So getting systems in place makes your business more valuable, because if you are the linchpin, if you are the hub that everything has to go through, your value is going to be not much. Because but if you have systems that run despite you and whether or not you are there, that adds value. So what we'll see in maybe half of the occasions is somebody even that wants to come in, really get things going so that they can sell out and be done. Half the time they're like, this is better now. I'm going to see if I can grow this a little bit more, because now there's some systems in place that they've learned how to relieve that bottleneck. They've learned things like the theory of constraints that show them that, hey, this is the area to focus on. Put everything into that basket until you expand capacity there. And it's like, hey, I'm kind of good at this. Well, yeah, that's why you started the business, right?
Absolutely. I know we're getting into the end of the podcast here, Justin. You've given us some great resources, the Freedom Flywheel, looking at these things. Hopefully people are thinking things a little differently than when they first started listening to this podcast, and doing a little maybe self reflection as to where am I in this flywheel, and where do I maybe need to make some adjustments, and perhaps have a conversation with Justin. And like I said, I'm going to make sure all of your contact information is in there, Justin, here on our show notes. Leave comments, by the way, you guys, if you're hearing something you want to comment, share, we love that. We love your feedback, of course, liking and subscribing, all that fun stuff wherever you guys find the podcast. But Justin, I want to give you an opportunity as we're wrapping up the podcast today. As you shared a lot with us, what would you say, is if I'm the business owner, that I should really take action today, or consider, or reflect, whatever the case might be for you, is say, what you want to impart with them to say, hey, if nothing else, if you took nothing else from this podcast, this is what I want you to walk away from today.
Well, there's so many things. What I first want to offer to anybody listening is, if you found any of this useful or resonating with any of you, then come and find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, and David will put everything in the notes here. It's Justin Lund is my Instagram handle. Just come and give me a follow and send me a DM that says Steward Freedom, and I'll send you my Founder Freedom playbook that has 3 components to it. And that's probably the best place to start, because I don't need your email address. I don't need just all I ask for is a follow. Just try to grow my followers a little bit there. But I'll send you, it's a Google Doc. There's a series of Google Docs, and you just have access to the playbooks that I use. And inside of those, there'll be little tips like, do you need an executive assistant? Then just message me back again, EA, and I'll send you an executive assistant playbook. That's, I think, David, the biggest thing that people, back to your point, I think you nailed it right on the head. Most guys, most gals in this position that are feeling this pain just feel trapped that I just need to keep it myself because it's going to be too hard or take too much time to delegate, try one of my playbooks. Just take the playbook and deploy it. You don't even have to work on the mindset and do all the woo-woo stuff. None of that. Just do that. I promise you'll see a win. I promise you'll get an hour or two back. I promise you'll feel the pressure go down a little. So I just want to help do that. And if you like the content and you follow, that's great too. So happy to help anywhere that I can with that stuff.
Great. Thank you, Justin. You guys, this is a great gift, an opportunity for you to get a little bit better time back. Justin's been doing this for a long time. Justin, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that with our audience today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, David.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, you know the drill. We love you guys sharing, subscribing, following along. That's all great. The whole point of this podcast is to help you, the business owner, leader, be more effective in how you're showing up every day and feeling really good about the way you're called to show up and lead your team, lead yourself. And again, thank Justin for being here and look forward to having you guys back in our next episode. Until then, be well, everybody. Thanks for listening in.